Welcome back to the Pig Trail Show. As always, we're joined by our Hoops insider, Kevin McPherson. And Kevin, you had a busy weekend. You were in North Little Rock for both of the Arkansas men's and women's games over there at Simmons Bank Arena. So we're going to talk about both of them since you got to see both of them. And look, I know wins are wins, but hey, at least for the men, that wasn't pretty. And we're going to talk about that. Arkansas surviving a scare from Lipscomb. 69-66, the final score. And again, Kevin, like I said before, it just wasn't pretty. I mean, Arkansas had a 20-point lead going into the final 10 minutes of that game, and they blew it. I mean, you look at that final score, just a 3-point victory for them. What were your takeaways from that game, and what did you see from the men?
Well, more of the same, head-scratching stuff. You know, Eric Musman has liberally used his entire roster much of the season in games that are close. For a tight 7 to 8 rotation guy, it must be driving him bonkers. But I mean, this is the team he assembled. It's one that we know they hit rough patches every year. This seems a little different than previous years, even though they've had some, not just one or two games, several games, handful or more of rough patches where they get it sorted out. This one feels a little bit different. But you mentioned it. I mean, this is a near implosion, a collapse, 20-point lead, 61-41, just over 10 minutes left. And then the wheels started to come off. Arkansas was still up 18 on Tremont Mark, who led the team's game high 17 points, hit his one and only shot in the second half, a mid-range shot. Arkansas was still up 18 with 9 minutes to go. And then a 17-0 run, a 6-minute, 18-second scoring drought. But it wasn't just poor offense where a zone defense, Arkansas couldn't solve that 1-3-1 that Lipscomb threw. And this was a Lipscomb team, by the way, not playing with its leading scorer. 17 points a game. Darren Boyd not playing in this game, thumb injury. But Arkansas couldn't solve the zone. And then on the defensive end, 50-50 balls. It seems like all of them went to Lipscomb. They were able to extend possessions. Arkansas also had turnovers on offense, not only not getting good ball movement for good looks, but some turnovers, forcing some things against that zone. And Lipscomb was able to cash in. 17-0 run. Now you're in a 1-point game in a dogfight down the stretch to come out with a win. And we know Arkansas's already lost to Greensboro, a mid-major at home. Didn't do very well when he went over to the Bahamas in the battle for Atlantis, 1-2 there. And then coming off a loss to Oklahoma, where you spent an entire week after getting soundly defeated, spent an entire week going back to training camp methods. You weren't focused as much on opponent as you were just looking within and trying to get things right. And you look good building a 20-point lead for 30 minutes for the most part, not perfect. I mean, Courtney, you're right. A win is a win, but sometimes, I mean, Arkansas moves back a spot in net back. They had finally gotten inside the top 100. They were at 99 coming into yesterday's game, now at 100. This is a quad 3 result. So Arkansas is 1-3 in quad 1, no results in quad 2. Quad 3 now 2-1. The loss to Greensboro is a quad 3 loss. 4-0 against quad 4. That's expected. But this team's got a lot of work to do. It's not only out of the rankings. I think most bracketologies have the Arkansas Razorbacks on the outside looking in. Some of them, ESPN, Joe Lunardi last week had 9 SEC teams in the field. Arkansas wasn't in there.
Yeah, I saw that. I think a lot of people saw that and went, oh my gosh, you have a majority of the SEC in and Arkansas left out. Ooh, that doesn't make you feel good.
But that's the work, that's the body of work Arkansas's put together. And this is why Musman's no closer to really solving a rotation. I see a lack of toughness. I see a lack of attention to detail. I see guys that came in with defensive accolades as being stoppers and going to be a lead or a plus, at least on that end. I haven't seen that. In Arkansas, at the end of the game, it was Devo Davis that goes and gets a bucket to cushion that lead to 3 with 26 seconds left. Even Musman wasn't pleased with that decision. I was pleased with it because you're still in a shot clock situation. Shot clock wasn't off. You've got to get a shot up. You don't want it to be something forced rush, or maybe you turn it over. And now you're trying to protect a 1-point lead, because then on offense, the other team has a lot more options when you're down 1 versus down 3 late with that little bit of time left. So kudos to Devo Davis for going and getting that bucket. He got a defensive rebound a few seconds later. Then Lipscomb was in the foul game. Layden Blocker, the true freshman, misses the front end of a 1-and-1, and now Lipscomb's going the other way and a 3 will still tie it and send it to overtime. So a lot went wrong. I mentioned the 17-0 run for Lipscomb. Arkansas, again, not good on the offensive glass, not good in second chance points, turnovers, -5 there, 14 turnovers. And the Razorbacks still shot the ball well. This was a game. This was not a good Lipscomb team in terms of defense. Arkansas shot over 50%. It finished the game over 52%. But it was also a team that didn't foul a lot. Arkansas came in averaging 28 free throw attempts a game, only 8. So you thought that might happen against this team, and that was part of why, as good as Arkansas was, they really couldn't generate free throws attempted. And the other team actually shot one more than Arkansas, went 7-9, better efficiency. So when it got drilled down to a one-possession game, little things like that can matter and can lead to why you lose a game and scratch your head and go, how did that happen? But Arkansas is no closer to knowing what it is with only 2 more non-conference games, Courtney, before you jump into that SEC that's deep. It may not be top heavy. People keep saying the SEC's down. It depends on how you look at it. I don't think there's 2 or 3 really, really good teams you look at and go, that's a national title contender here in December. Well, I can see that from here. Maybe not that, but there's 8, 9, maybe 10 teams that you start looking at it going, okay, the resumes aren't awful. These are teams you can actually talk about being in that NCAA tournament field. And again, Lenardi's saying it. He's one of the best in the business. Now, things will change as we move forward, but if the season ended today, Arkansas is probably on the outside looking in at 8 or 9 teams in the conference that would make it in. And just individually, real quick, I know we were going to talk about some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it back to you, and you let me know who you want to talk about.
Yeah, I do want to talk. You bring up kind of the positives. I mean, there is so much negative that we can take from this game, especially when this Arkansas team is just searching for an identity right now. I mean, it feels just so late already in the year. I know we haven't started conference play, but it just feels like this team should know their identity, be a little bit consistent. We just don't have that right now. And I think that's why Musselman is just so frustrated. And you could see it on his face. You want to know this team's identity. You want to see some consistency, and you don't have those things. And as a coach, again, I feel the frustration. But like you said, we're going to talk about some of the positive. And I think one of the positives that I liked seeing in this matchup early on was Jalen Graham. I mean, scoring in double figures. He had 11 points. He had 2 blocks in just 15 minutes of play. Kevin, did you want to see him play a little bit more? I know some people were saying I wanted to see him play a little more. Did you?
Not necessarily, and let me tell you why. And this goes back to Musselman's NBA experience. Sometimes less is more with guys, and what that means is you're only going to get so much of it. You want to maximize their productivity, their efficiency. If he were more sound and consistent rebounding the ball and in the defensive assignments, even though the guys around him aren't doing much better right now, Musselman has figured out how to get the most out of him. He had a turnover against that zone. His box +8 was the best on the team, but it might be a little misleading because Muss yanked him before that run got even wilder. So, had he stayed on the court, he might have been catching a negative box by the end of the thing when the dust settled. I think you could see it both ways, Courtney. I think it's a good point to bring up because here's a guy that's typically productive offensively. He got a couple of blocks. We've seen some energy plays going back to that OU game with some blocked shots even. But then part of that's because he's having to recover. He's got good bounce, and he can when he recovers, he can maybe block a shot but he's also getting beat off the bounce. Only 1 rebound in 15 minutes yesterday. Arkansas, that was a problem area. So offense, yeah. Mekhi Mitchell, positive, came in 6 of 6 from the field, 5 rebounds, 0 turnovers, 19 minutes. So I think both of those guys, it wasn't Chandler Lawson's night. He got the start. So it's been kind of a 3-headed 5 spot. But look, positives, Arkansas's won 3 of its last 4 games, including in that run is the win over then top 10 ranked Duke, a team that counts as Arkansas's lone quad 1 win. Jalen Graham missed the Greensboro game in all of the Bahamas, and he's been dealing with back spasms kind of on and off there. Bringing him up, moving forward, where can they use him? How can they get him to give them more defensively and on the glass? Because I agree with you and some fans that say, I want to see more, but we need to see more from Jalen taking the next step, I think. And I think that's what Eric Musselman wants to see. But there were some positives. I mentioned that within 3 of the last 4. The other thing is, when you go back, I'm going to bring up Purdue again. It doesn't count. It doesn't have you to look. You didn't just beat Duke in a vacuum. You've beaten Purdue knocks off number 1 Arizona. Purdue's been at number 1. Purdue's going back to number 1.
Mm-hmm.
it's proof of concept that the pieces are there. That's a positive. Okay, all right, we got to figure out a way to get it right and keep it right. But I think there's some positives, even when you look back to exhibition play.
Yeah. Well, another positive, and I know people were excited about this week, is Keon Manyfield. The news that the NCAA granting his waiver to play, and so we actually got to see him play in this matchup against Lipscomb, which I think is just, I know this the stat sheet didn't really show too much. I think he had 2 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists, but still, it was nice to see him get out there and get some playing time. And I know Musselman was excited to get him on the court as well. How did you feel about his debut?
I liked it. And you mentioned the stats. I thought those were good stats. But he also was a box +2 in his 19 minutes. So, you're talking about someone that has not played the first 10 games. He's practicing, but he's been on the scout team a lot. And Arkansas doesn't do a lot of live 5-on-5 scrimmaging in practice anyway. So here's a guy that's really not been in any kind of game settings. You have to go back to the red-white intra-squad scrimmage, and that's not a great measure of what a guy can do. I mean, you could see a little bit, and I was impressed that day. But I thought his energy yesterday, there were plays that don't show up in a box score where he was getting deflections, a couple of rebounds that he kept alive, just kept the ball alive and got it to a teammate. He didn't get credit for a stat. He got an assist. His first assist was less than a minute into the game. He hits Tremont Mark. Mark had hit back-to-back triples in that first half. It was the second of the 3. Really quick pass, wide open, knocks it down off catch and shoot. Minifield's first assist, just a minute in the game. It was his first stat as a Hog. And then with about 4 minutes left, Courtney, he had a putback,
Yeah,
an offensive a hustle play, a 50-50 ball. He gets a stick back. That was his 2 points, but it extended Arkansas to a 10-point lead late in that first half. So there were some good things throughout in his energy. He's got a different kind of burst. Layden Blocker's kind of an A to B burst kind of guy. This young man has quick twitch, shifty, can go left, right, and kind of shake things up a little bit. And I think Arkansas needs some of these quickness elements because they've got some good athletes, different kinds of guys, but he adds a little something else. It's too soon to expect a lot of stats. You're right. Looking across the board, that's probably about right what you'd expect in a game like this, especially when Musselman's still doing roster soul searching and playing everybody. I mean, Denaje Harris gets in. Bay Fall, I think, was the only scholarship player who didn't play. Joseph Pinion from Morrilton got the start. He clocked 2 minutes. L. Ellis, a guy that looked really good in the preseason, down to a minute of playing time in this last game. You talk about Caleb Battle, only 11 minutes, 2 points. He's a guy that was Arkansas's leading scorer and does some really good things offensively. Maybe part of the reason, in addition to Lipscomb not fouling a lot, Battle draws those FTAs, man. He gets to the line. He's the leading, coming into that game, the leader in the SEC and getting to the foul line in a high efficiency, over 80%. Didn't see that in this game. He wasn't on the court enough.
I like how you use the term soul searching in the roster. That's a great term. And I think it also kind of applies to my neighbors right now. I think they're doing a little bit of soul searching and what works and what's going on and how are they kind of gelling at the right time. We got to talk to Samara Spencer. If you haven't seen that interview, go and watch it. You can watch it on our YouTube on hogville.net as well. But we talked to her and she's like, we're still kind of like, we're gelling, we're good, we're together, but we're still kind of finding out what our identity is a little bit. So she even said that they picked up the win yesterday as well. They played before the men. They beat Samford, and I think the final score was 68-54, if I'm correct on that. Sam Spencer leading the team. She had 20 points, which was great to see her back in action and looking like herself a little bit in this game. Arkansas also forced 21 turnovers, so I thought that was a positive too. Kevin, you watched that game. What do you take away from the women?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you brought up the Samara Spencer interview. We were both wearing earth tones for that interview, unplanned, not planned. And I brought it back today because I knew we were going to talk about the Hogs. She was the leading scorer, 15 big points in the second half. But look, this is a player, when I've looked at her since she's been at Arkansas, just an outstanding do whatever it takes type of player. You cannot paint her with a single brush and say this is what she is. She does whatever it takes. 5 first half points. But 15 in the second half. At her drive game, Arkansas was struggling shooting from 3 all game, and she and Michaela Daniels in tandem started getting backdoor cuts or just with Sam just crossing people up and getting to the basket. And she got some and ones in there. But just a solid game from her when you looked at it from the field, from the free throw line. And then she does other things, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, getting some steals. Just plays a smart floor game, and you've got a brilliant scorer in Talia Scott, right? Game to game, 24 and a half points, sixth in Division One coming in. It wasn't her night. Other players have to step up. And I thought the veteran guards did, but it started with Samara Spencer because Talia Scott ended up with 9 points, but 8 of those coming in the second half. It was just not a good night for her offensively. And then Sailor Poffenbarger, who game high 13 rebounds, so she did the work that she always does there, averaging a double double. But offensively, it wasn't her night as well. So two of your top main scorers weren't having the kind of night they're used to. In Arkansas, coming off a loss, both men and women needed wins. We can talk about soul searching and roster misidentity, or we don't know who we are yet. True. But if you're going to play games, bottom line, you need to find a way to win. I think, talking to Mike Neighbors, he said, we played hard. He goes, we probably didn't do everything right. That's true. And I saw that too. They had trouble-ish areas on both ends. But teams this time of year, what we expect coming into it isn't always how it plays out, and you're still figuring things out. On some level, you can see the dysfunctionality on both teams, but both teams are coming off losses, and they get back in the win column in North Little Rock and Central Arkansas. But Samara Spencer, I can't wait till we interview her the next time. So we can talk about some of the stuff we saw on Saturday in person, for me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm sure we're going to have her again on the show. She is just awesome. Again, yeah. I'm going to plug that interview one more time because it was a great interview, great to get to talk to her, and great to kind of get her summing up what the season has been so far. Because again, like you said, it's all about the bounce back, right? This team they faced adversity and then they bounced back, and that's kind of what you want to see going into SEC play. Where on the women's side of things, just like the men's side, I mean, women's side is a gauntlet. So they are going to be challenged very early on.
Well, and I mentioned the win over Duke for the men. How about the win over a ranked Florida State team?
Yeah.
Away from home.
Yeah.
For the women. So they've got quality and they've got some sort of body of work, even if it's not a huge body of work, but you've got examples of we can do this. We've gone and done it. We got to do it again.
Absolutely, Kevin. Moving on a little bit because I know we're running out of time, but I do want to ask you, there were some special guests in the audience for the men's game in North Little Rock, some Hog targets and I think a couple of guys, maybe 3 or 4. Can you tell us who was there in attendance for the Hogs?
Well, there was actually a long list of players planning to be there, expected to be there. I didn't get eyes on all of them actually being there. I've got to do some follow-up. I haven't had time yet today to see who all actually did make it and didn't, but some out-of-state guys, including a 6'11" kid out of Atlanta, Texas. But the local kids, I talk about them all the time. Class of 2026, I think they're both 5 stars. Technically, only one is right now. I think both of them are. But we're talking Jacob Lanier, 6'6" guard out of Maumelle, national top 30, not quite 5-star level according to the service, but he will be, or he should be, or they don't know what they're doing. But just a smooth backcourt player, can play the 1, 2, or 3. Great floor IQ, great court awareness. He was in the house. He had a game. He had games Friday and Saturday, as did JJ Andrews, 6'6" wing at a Little Rock Christian Academy. National top 20 guy, 5-star already. Both of them Central Arkansas players, both in the house. By the way, Arkansas assistant coaches on Friday night went to their games. You had in Maumelle, you had Anthony Ruda, Arkansas assistant coach, to check out Jacob Lanier on Friday night, and then you had Keith Smart, Arkansas assistant coach in Conway for the John Stanton Classic, where Little Rock Christian Academy was playing, to see Andrews. So both of those guys were seen. Terrion Burgess, 6'9" combo forward out of Benton, Arkansas assistant coach Michael Musman was out to see him Friday night in Benton. I was actually at that game for the first quarter of play and got to see that. Another double for Terrion, a priority recruit in the 2025 class, Central Arkansas, Benton High School. So when you have this North Little Rock game, people are always saying, well, it's not always televised. It's not always, the record's not great down there. It always seems like it's hard to win. Well, it's hard to win in college basketball, even if you're not Arkansas. Yeah, it's hard to win when you don't get to play every game at home. It is a great recruiting tool because of the talent level in this part of the state. And it's an opportunity for the coaches with feet on the ground. They don't have to go far to get out and see these guys. And all of these should be priority recruits, not only for the Razorbacks, but most of them have high major offers around the SEC. But you mentioned it. Several of those guys were at the game. got a chance to get into Simmons Bank Arena, but also knowing that Arkansas coaches are going out and seeing them at their games this weekend, it was win-win for the Arkansas Razorbacks in recruiting. The proof will be in the pudding later on when we start seeing some commitments and some official visits and then commitments and things like that. But this is how you bridge to that.
Kevin, I'm so glad you mentioned that because a lot of people want to talk about all the negatives of that game. And I know that Simmons Bank Arena even had trouble with the lighting for the first 5 minutes of the game. I know there are some negatives. I get it. I totally understand where those people are coming from. But for recruiting, it's huge. I love seeing those guys there. You were taking pictures of them saying, these guys are here. They came to their place. They came to their hometown, their neck of the woods. And that is huge. It shows the care that this team has, especially for going out over there and giving some love to the Central Arkansas fans. I think that is a big deal. And those recruits see that. They know that. They love that. And so I'm so glad you brought that up because we want to talk all about the negative, but there is a positive when it comes to recruiting from playing those games over in North Little Rock. So again, I appreciate you for bringing that up. We're going to finish. We always do with some Pro Hogs talk. And man, we got to talk about Bobby Portis. He has just been going off. I just love it. I love watching that guy play. I know a bunch of people do, but man, over in the win over the Pistons on Saturday night, I believe it was, 31 points, 12 rebounds, his third double-double of the season, right? Yeah. I'm like, Kevin, he's awesome. Just talk about Bobby Portis for a second and what you see from him.
Well, the Bucks were coming off a revenge win over the Indiana Pacers where Giannis, the Greek Freak, went off for a franchise record 64 points. Bobby, by the way, had 19 points in that game, but got tossed trying to protect Giannis after he was thrown to the floor, ends up getting tossed in that game. So he had a really good game coming into this Pistons game. The Pistons aren't very good. It doesn't matter. These are the best players in the world. Even teams with only 2, 3, or 4 losses have players, and they can rise up and beat you, okay? And when you go drop a 31 piece, I mean, Portis played most of the first quarter and didn't attempt a field goal. He had 6 of his 12 rebounds in the first quarter. He does more than just give you that offensive punch. But the 12 rebounds, he was a double machine last year. Role's a little bit different this year, and it's a different coaching staff, a new head coach. But man, he's really got it cooking. I mentioned it, 19 and 31. The Bucks have a back-to-back. They play a good Rockets team. The Rockets have been a laughingstock, but they've got under new leadership and a head coach. They got some pieces out of the free agency, along with a lot of good young talent. A winning record for the Rockets right now. So the Bucks are going to be challenging it tonight. Let's see what Bobby does. But I have a feeling when my next Pro Hoop Hogs report comes out that Bobby Portis is going to be the Pro Hoop Hog Player of the Week. That's a mouthful.
I like that prediction.
I make sure to recognize everybody gets their limelight. I get all the stats out, what they did, but somebody's got to stand at the top for the week. I bet that's going to be Bobby Portis. By the way, Courtney, last night, big win for the Oklahoma City Thunder on the road, defending NBA champion Denver Nuggets, 2-time MVP, the Joker, Nikola Jokic. The Thunder won.
Yeah.
Last second shot, win by a point. Isaiah Joe, 12 points, 2 rebounds, an assist, a steal, a block, a drawn charge on the Joker. So he had a really nice game to help that win. He was on the court for most of the fourth quarter, had some big defensive plays in that game. I went through some of that. And then Jalen Williams, J-Will, also in double figures, 11 points, 3 of 4 from 3, 4 rebounds and assist. Really good floor game for him. Isaiah Joe, I mentioned his stats. Seems like it's always the case. Game high box score plus minus. He was a plus 12 in his 27 minutes. So kudos to the Oklahoma City Thunder, one of the best records in the West, a very young team to go and beat a Denver team that's your defending NBA champion. That was a big deal. Nick Smith Jr. on the court last night for the Charlotte Hornets, matched his career high 9 points. Anthony Black earlier this week for the Magic, career high 13 points, 5 of 8 from the field, including 3 of 5 from 3. He's starting to learn how to shoot that 3 ball. And 9 rebounds. He was a rebound away from his first career double-double. They lost the game. It was in Boston. They play at Boston again today, kind of like a baseball mini-series. A couple of days later, you're back. You're still playing that same team on their home court. I guess they try to cut down on travel. They started doing that during COVID, and now they kind of stayed with that. But anyway, Anthony Black, solid game there. I mean, all these pro hogs, Daniel Gafford averaging career highs and everything, averaging over 10 points a game, over 7 rebounds. That's almost a 2 rebound per game improvement for him. He's getting tougher on the glass, starting to rebound like he did at Arkansas. Among the leaders every year, though, in blocks, or two blocks, a little bit more than that, top 5 or 6 or so in blocks. Very efficient player. I mean, we could just continue to go. Patrick Beverly, for the first time really in years, playing off the bench with a good Sixers team, but adding value there. Has some big games. Moses Moody in the rotation at Golden State had a double-figure scoring game this week. He's just really in his 3rd season, already an NBA champion like Bobby Portis, doing a great job for the Warriors.
Yeah, and you could kind of lead that into our other conversation. You know what else does well for recruiting? When we have all these pro hogs who are lighting it up on the stat sheets in the NBA and doing really great things, we go, yeah, where did they graduate from? Because I was seeing a video on social media, and it was Anthony Black giving back, and this little kid goes, I know where you went to school, and he goes, yeah, and he goes, Arkansas, and that to you, it's you see what I'm saying? It's like that does so well for brand recognition, all of that. It helps with recruiting. It's all good news. So I love to hear all the updates. Oh, we got a little thing on here. Hold on. I love to hear all the updates on the Pro Hoop Hogs, and we always like to end with it each week. And I'll be awaiting to see if Bobby Portis is going to be your MVP. I have quite a feeling that he'll definitely be and take that title for you next week, Kevin. That's going to do it for your Hoop Hogs report this week. We'll be right back after the break.